This is our first STEM and One Book industry panel that we've had. Have any of you ever heard of One Book before? No? Bristol Community College every year chooses a book that is used across campus, across curriculum. It's used, the faculty incorporate it within their different programs. This year, our One Book was Ready Player One. Show of hands, how many have read Ready Player One? Awesome. Seen the movie? I cringe when I say that. Read the book. So we're going to talk, that is kind of the backbone of our discussion today. We're going to talk about virtual and augmented reality, and we're going to tie in the book with some of the questions as well. And then we're going to talk a little bit about CIS, computer information systems in general, for those of you that might be interested in going into that field. So I'm just going to start off by introducing our speakers today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one of them and ask them a series of questions, and then we're going to open it up for some Q&A. So start thinking as you're listening to the speakers about what you might like to ask them based on their expertise. And then you will have a chance to watch, and some of you to actually experience hands-on VR equipment today. So our hope is that we will have the last almost hour or so for those of you that want to try the equipment, so as many of you that are able to try it as possible. So I'm going to start by introducing our speakers. So on my far right, we have Bill Emmons. And Bill is currently a subject matter expert at AT&T and has held various positions throughout his 23 years with the company. In his current role, Bill is involved with the development of the internal system tooling necessary for the deployment of the 5G mobile network as an expert in core telecom and mobile and next-generation cell networks. Additionally, he performs work as a robotic process automation, or RPA, bot developer. These software bots relieve humans of having to perform repetitive, mindless tasks, allowing them to instead perform higher value work. Prior to working at AT&T, Bill served in the United States Navy as a nuclear reactor operator and worked as a nuclear electronics technician in the commercial nuclear industry. Bill received his Bachelor of Science at the University of Connecticut and his Master of Science in Innovation and IT Management at Champlain College. So please welcome Bill. And the second speaker we have for you this morning is Philip Ransbottom. And Philip started his company, A VR Story, LLC, in March of 2018, so a year ago. His company brings a premier virtual reality experience to entertainment venues and events throughout the South Coast region and beyond. Philip uses the latest high-end virtual reality systems to transport participants to places that can only be experienced to be believed. Far-off lands, quick trips around the world, battling aliens and zombies, which I know a lot of you like to do, or creating art with a new dimension. Philip is a strong advocate for the use of VR technology to enhance learning in schools as well as in industry applications. With a bachelor degree in English and as a self-taught programmer, Philip combines the technical with the creative on a daily basis at A VR Story. Prior to starting his company, he worked as a sales manager in marketing, service, and IT in the hydroelectric industry. And before working in that industry, he worked in screenwriting for movies. So what I'm going to do is start out by asking a couple of questions to our speakers, and then I will open up the floor for your questions.
Well, first of all,
Round of applause for Philip. So though I did give a little bit of background about each of them, I do want them to tell a little bit more about themselves. So whichever one of you would like to start, talk a little bit about your background, your education, work history, and how did you get into the field that you are currently in? So whichever one of you would like to start.
Testing, 1, 2. So first of all, I want to thank BCC for having me here, and also for everyone who's attending as well. I think this is really an exciting time to be able to learn about STEM and how it can, help you out into the future, especially when you guys are considering what you're going to do for a career. And so my background, as Christy described, is that I actually started in the creative field. So my main concentration was actually screenwriting for movies, and I've actually interned for several production companies generally in this area. Probably the biggest one, if you guys haven't seen the movie, not that I'm doing this as a shameless plug, but the movie Passionata that was directed by Dan Ireland. So that was one of the bigger productions. And then over the course of the years, my trajectory for my career changed pretty dramatically. So I didn't want to get into screenwriting in movies right away, and I wanted to go to a different path. So the way I did that was I started learning about marketing and public relations, and that was really where I started learning sales, and that kind of triggered my interest into travel and technology. With that, during that time, there was an opportunity for me to tour across the U.S. and Canada. And the company that I previously worked for, Rexa Inc., is actually a manufacturing company out here in Massachusetts that manufactures closed-loop electro-hydraulic actuators. And if you guys know what that is, more power to you. But they're, to give you just kind of a nickel tour of what they do, is that they manufacture these small machines that operate industrial-sized valves, gates, and turbines. So when I started with the company, I was able to learn a little bit more about how things were made, and that really kind of sparked my general interest and pursuit to learn more about technology. And for the first time, I could see where the raw materials came from that were inside phones, as well as where the electricity that came to power buildings and houses. So that was a very exciting time for me. And on top of that, the managers and owners of the company were very supportive in helping me develop, my knowledge in the technical field. So part of the requirements, well, not the requirements, it was just kind of an option, was that I had to read a process engineering book while I was on tour. And that was something that, strangely enough, it was a textbook, and for some people that might not be fun, but because I'm an English major, I don't mind reading. So with that, while I was on tour, was able to learn how to program literally over a weekend while I was in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I can talk offline about kind of more details of how that kind of played out. So in between that time, I was able to participate in a lot of different aspects of the company, which included working on the databases for the company as they were migrating into a newer version of their system. And then on top of that, be part of the service team as a technician. And then eventually moving into the sales role, which gave me the opportunity to travel worldwide, which was really amazing. And then, so as I was transitioning over from a hydro industry manager and then going into owning my own company, it actually took me a year to start the company first, because I wanted to make sure that a lot of the different nuances and issues that you might be dealing with, both on a technical issue, but also many other issues that are involved with copyrights and things like that, and running software allowed me to be able to pursue it, more seriously. So that's really a really long, drawn-out way of saying how I started the company. So it's been a year now. It's been very exciting. There's a lot of new development going on today. And actually this week, if anyone is familiar, that this week is actually the Game Developers Conference out in California. So a lot of the software companies are out there kind of introducing a lot of their new technologies that are being released very soon or have already been out. So thank you.
I know what an electro-hydraulic actuator is, by the way. So, good morning, everybody. Thank you to BCC for having us here, and thank you all for being here today. I know you're on a field trip, so you're kind of a captive audience anyway. My story is kind of a unique one, I guess. Out of high school, first go at college, I wasn't real serious about it. I ended up going into the U.S. Navy through the nuclear power program. I was a nuclear reactor operator in the Navy, which you're boiling water to make steam to turn turbines to power a ship. So that's what I did for a living in the Navy. Worked in a commercial nuclear power plant as a nuclear instrument technician working on instrumentation and actuators. Exactly. You know, working at a power plant that puts power on the grid that, you know, lights up your homes, powers your electronics and everything else. Great career, great place. We lived in Virginia Beach, and my wife was from New England. I'm from Indiana originally, and we didn't want our kids growing up not knowing family. So we actually decided whoever gets a job first will move, and my wife got a teaching job in Connecticut, and I quit my job at the power plant. People thought we were absolutely insane. I remember driving up with 2 keys in my pocket, and they're both car keys, and I had a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, you know, and you're kind of like, okay, no job, what am I thinking? Got in with the phone company 2 weeks later, and now it's 23 years later, and it's now AT&T is the parent company where I work. I've been very fortunate there. I would say 8 different careers with the same company. Started as a technician, went into training, being a training manager, people manager. If you see the little buildings in your town, you know, like a Verizon little office that nobody goes into, that's where the network equipment is housed. So I was a manager, you know, for people that work in those buildings and maintain the network. And then project manager for high-end clients that spend a lot of money for our services, you know, so like big insurance companies and things like that, they all have their internal network, and they actually can't have it fail. So I was part of a project, part of a sales team actually, and I project managed things that they were adding throughout their own network. And now I'm in the mobility side, involved with the, well, 3G, 4G, and soon to be 5G rollout of technology. And as far as, you know, being a systems expert, there's so many systems behind the scene that people don't think about that makes everything work. You know, if you think about a cell tower that has an ID, the radio hanging on the tower has an ID, and we need to direct traffic through that to the backbone network to get to the other side. So, you know, being an expert in one little system, you know, there's hundreds of systems that support that network. And also, the big turn in my recent career was I saw an internal presentation on robotic process automation. Has anyone heard of that? We have one? All right. If you're interested in it, do some research on it. RPA is what it's called. And what it does, it's software. It's click and drag software. So you don't even need to be a coder, which I'm not a coder, to be able to use this software. It's click and drag functionality, and you can build a function that someone does. So if someone takes information off an Excel spreadsheet and has to upload it into a web application and populate all these different fields and hit a button to send it to another database, you can actually train a bot to do that. And that's what I'm currently doing on the side, as well as some other projects. But as soon as I saw the presentation on that, I looked, and there was internal training available at AT&T that, you know, they have through a vendor, and I signed up, took it, built my first bot, demoed it to my director. My director said, okay, you're now doing that full time. He never said it, but I knew I had to justify my own salary with the savings that the bot would provide. And yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing right now. So, and if anyone has any questions about that aspect of things, because we won't get into that too much today, I don't think, but come see me after and we can talk offline. Thank you.
Thank you both. So now we're going to get into a little more about the content itself. So to touch on VR technology and the start of VR technology, although it's been around for over 20 years, when it first came around in the 80s and 90s, it really didn't live up to its hype. And then with the creation of the internet, that became the new form of technology that everybody was interested in. But today's VR industry is often compared to the smartphone industry of 8 or 9 years ago. right before the explosion of the smartphone. Why do you think that people are so excited about VR now, and do you think that it's just a passing fad? So, Philip, I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Okay, well, in the 80s and 90s, one of the things to point out was that the technology wasn't robust enough. It didn't mature to the level that it is today. And even today, it's actually still in that process of developing. So, you know, what you see today is something that's been in development for several years. But if you think about some of the technology that was available in the 80s or 90s, computing was actually just starting to really come around a little bit more and really started making a splash. So in itself, you know, virtual reality was kind of developing with the technology. And at the time, I mean, there are certain aspects about it that were it was more prohibitive for people to adopt it. And part of the reason for that was just because, you know, a VR headset back then, I want to say the name of the company is Virtuality, was one of the first companies to develop a VR headset. And strangely enough, I want to see if anyone can guess, how expensive do you think this system was back in the 80s? What is it?
$2,000.
No, it was actually $60,000 to $70,000. So comparatively, the consumer version, say, of the HTC Vive right now is somewhere in the $500 to $600. So the economy of scale have changed pretty dramatically, on top of the fact that the technology itself has caught up. So there's a lot of things that are going on under the hood in this headset with these they call them lighthouses, but essentially they're infrared sensors that allow the ability for the headset to track where it is in a space. So the technology back then was just not conducive to mass adoption, particularly because you know, between hardware and software, those things weren't available. Now, I mean, you know, I have a computer that sits on top of this cart right here. You know, far less than the $60,000 to $100,000 that you would consider. And then, is it a passing fad? I don't believe so. One of the things about virtual reality, especially if any of the people who've tried it, if you guys could raise your hand, please, just show who's tried virtual reality. So I'm sure when you guys tried it out, it's like, wow, this is way different than what I anticipated. It was much better than what I anticipated. One of the great things about it is the ability for visualization, and then other applications. Like earlier, Bill and I were talking about you know, being afraid of heights. One of the great things about virtual reality is that you have that ability to simulate what it feels like to be very high up in the air, because one of the key words that they use in the virtual reality industry is presence. So you're able to feel like you're in that particular space. So there's a lot of practical applications that the technology can be used for besides entertainment. Usually that's usually the first area that people think about, right? Because if you're ever using, say, you know, the Steam platform that I set up earlier, right? That's a game platform, but there's actually applications on there that you can use for utility. You know, whether it's a game engine, and as you can see over here, tilting my head, but I have Blender and Unreal Engine on this computer as well, and those are tool sets that are available to be able to not only create games, but those have the ability to showcase, you know, simulating physics, graphics, and if you guys are familiar with you know, making a game at a very small level, you'll know that there's a lot that goes into it, and especially as Bill described, you know, with all these large systems that are out there, there are many subsystems that allow the equipment to work or the system to work. You know, so it's a pretty vast field that you can get into with this type of stuff, whether it's, you know, you're writing code, or you're the artist, or you're working on the systems and networks. I mean, it's quite vast. And on top of that, there's a lot of new development to make it more accessible for people, because there is a little bit of a bifurcation of what's going on with the industry, where, you know, different engines have different code bases and things like that. So just yesterday, I was actually reading about OpenXR. So it's a standard open source platform that allows developers to be able to, you know, make experiences for different types of headsets much more quickly. So with that, across the board, you know, the industry is continuously evolving, and it's evolving very quickly, and that allows people like you to, you know, the opportunity to get into it early on while it's still nascent in its development. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. I'm now going to ask Bill. Telecommunications, for those of you that don't know what it is, and Bill has has explained it a little bit, is sort of the backbone for virtual reality. So Bill's question is going to be a little bit different. Bill, telecommunications can be used to help virtual reality systems. So an example of this could be a surgery simulation, where surgeries are performed in remote locations using robotic technology or virtual reality. What are some other examples of how virtual reality can enhance the telecommunications field? And then what do you see as the advantages of this new technology, or the disadvantages?
Sure. So I guess the first thing I thought of was, for use within a corporation, you know, training is the first thing you would think of, you know, that, you know, now you can bring real life simulation to whatever task is being performed. I mean, all the way to hazardous environments, you know, not even telecom. But I guess I would like to flip that around as far as how telecom is going to impact, you know, the VR and AR industry with connectivity. The mobile VR, mobile AR. Has anyone used any kind of like augmented reality app on your phone, right? You know, where you hold it up and, I don't know, you see the little guy, what was that, Pokemon Go or whatever? I don't know what that was. I never got involved. But you know, where you be able to get more information about what you're looking at. I think that's going to be the big change. 5G, which is 5th generation cell network. If you know, if anyone tries to tell you it's anything else, it's just, you know, the first generation 2G, 3G, 4G became LTE, which is long-term evolution. We, in the industry, we thought that was going to be the end of it. Everything's LTE. So now we're 5G, with it, which is the 5th generation network. Initially, it's going to be a data network. Your voice traffic will still go on the old network, while your data traffic and your data experience, is, if we're talking about virtual and augmented reality, that traffic will get routed to the 5G network, which will speeds up to, you know, hundreds of megabits a second. And, you know, if you think about your connection at home, you're going to take that with you. So, and to elaborate on the previous question, as far as, you know, why now, I guess the first thing I kind of thought of is you all out there. You know, back in the 80s, technology wasn't out there. People didn't have their own computer, and they certainly didn't have the knowledge base available to them that you all have. Philip's self-taught. You know, you can go to Udacity, or what's the other one? Unity. Is Unity one? Or, yeah, Udemy. I'm sorry. You can go take these classes on your own, on your computer, offline, and, you know, learn how to do this stuff. And, you know, you've grown up with a smartphone, you've grown up with technology, and now I kind of think you're probably at the point of, now what, right? Okay, you know, yeah, I like this, you know, that's okay. You know, how about I go experience the world and, you know, use the technology as a tool for me to experience the world, instead of being enslaved to this little thing where I'm looking at a little news feed from somebody. So I think that's the big changes that are coming. So that's my take on it. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. To tie this into Bristol's One book this year, Ready Player One, in which the author contains a warning, so to speak, to readers about the potential danger found in complete dedication to technology. and the importance instead of building relationships in the actual rather than the virtual world. What are your thoughts on how the incorporation of the latest technologies, VR being one of them, in industry will affect our interpersonal relationships with our colleagues and with our industry partners?
Okay, that's a lot to say there. I think the most important aspect, right, is that one of the great things that I have to point out about a technology is that the economies of scale. You know, the orders of magnitude of how technology allows us to connect with each other is much faster than it's ever been, and it continues to get faster. So being a person that used to travel quite a bit and dealing with international clients, one of the things that would have helped when I was doing this kind of stuff was to be able to communicate some of the design concepts, both mechanically for instrumentation and things like that, of that nature, where, you know, a lot of the times that we were communicating stuff were PDFs or, you know, whatever it is, and being able to visualize a three-dimensional space to someone and communicate that, you know, on a 2D plane is actually much more difficult than you know, in reality than it is. Whereas if you had, you know, this technology being adopted, and even then when I started as a hydro industry manager, it was still very difficult, and this thing was just starting to emerge. There's a lot of different fields that go into virtual reality, but overall, you know, as a more productive level to get things done, especially since you know, you communicate with people all across the world, you want to be able to communicate much more easily. But with that in mind, there are also risks, but the risk, I believe, is actually on an individual basis, all right? It's basically understanding kind of the ramifications that come with, you know, using something over a long period of time. I particularly, and I can honestly say that I've played video games for 4 hours in virtual reality and had no major issues there. But it's one of those things where, again, it's any type of negative aspects that you have to deal with when using technology, it really comes down to an individual level, you know, because everything is accessible, you know. So with that in mind, you know, as a person, you have to, you know, be conscious about, you know, why you're using something, or, you know, why you're posting something, and just being a little bit more aware of what you're putting out there. I mean, you know, me personally, I think it's just easier, you know, if, I don't know if anyone uses Facebook, but I have a lot of family members in the Philippines, and it's a really easy way for me to connect with them, either, you know, video messaging or just messaging before. This was not available, you know, when I was 16, 17 years old. Of course, yeah, there are people that might use that type of stuff more than others, but that's something that, like I said, on an individual basis, you have to be able to be more aware of the type of usage. But overall, a lot of this technology that's available is really, you know, it really allows different ideas and allows you to connect with people much more easily. And you know, especially if you know, you have a relationship from someone far away, right, and you want to feel like that person's right next to you. You know, I read articles about virtual reality like that, like, oh, you know, a person travels, you know, there's jobs out there that you're gone for 7 months, maybe even longer. So sometimes being able to connect with people is made a little bit easier with that, especially, you know, like if you're in the military, you might not have that opportunity to be able to engage with someone. You know, the technology today allows you to do that, but acting responsibly on what it provides also is an important aspect of it. And I think being able to talk about that, it's less about technology and more philosophy and psychology, I guess, with this topic. So that's all I got to say about that.
Thank you.
And if I could elaborate on, I agree with everything you said, and I think ethics is a huge issue that you all are going to have to figure out. Part of my master's program, my advisor was doing a research study on Second Life. Has anyone heard of that platform, Second Life? It's a virtual world that was around and then failed miserably, and it's still kind of out there. You could look it up. There's a new platform out there, Sansar is what that's called, but it's a virtual world where you can build yourself as an avatar. You can create items, body parts, everything in there, and actually sell them, with virtual cash to other people within the virtual worlds. But one of the things that my advisor was working on is he actually went in as a female avatar and just to see how he was treated in these worlds. And as everyone, Grand Theft Auto, what kind of chatter is going on right through the headset or the Xbox games, right? What kind of chatter is going on? Yeah. so it's a real thing. And so for a corporation to take that on, I mean, think about it. That's people are going to have to behave themselves. They're going to have to behave ethically. And okay, so we only had a couple of people that read the book and a few more that saw the movie. The players in Ready Player One, what was their biggest fear? Does anybody remember that? Their own identity. Do you remember that? They were terrified to be outed as far as who they were because the evil corporation would, come stomp them out. So, privacy with Facebook, I'm going on one. I should say the social platforms, who reads the details, when you pull down an app, where they actually tell you whether or not they're going to sell your information. And, I get mad at this app. I'm going to go use this other app instead. That app might be owned by the same company you just migrated from, and they have what they want from you anyway, which is your personal information. So I think ethics and privacy are two huge things that you all are going to have to figure out. So please do it well. Thank you.
Thank you. What are some ways, and this is a question for both of you, what are some ways that our schools, both pre-K through 12, so our high schools especially, and our post-secondary schools, can incorporate new technology into their classroom to enhance student learning? So more specifically, VR.
Okay, so technology is everywhere. That should be the first point that comes to mind. And a lot of it, too, is being able to spark that interest. One of the things I like about virtual reality, and this is just my own personal opinion on it, is that it bridges the line between what's entertainment and what's, I guess, what you consider, something more serious. And that's one of the key points there is that, and on top of that, with in schools or maybe at a younger age, there might be limited exposure to different types of experiences that people can have. And one of the ways to spark that interest is be able to simulate it. In very much the same way, like if you're training to run like the half marathon in New Bedford, one of the things that you want to do is you want to train for it, right? So one of the ways that you do that is you simulate what it would be like to be running in the marathon. So you run a certain course that's like 10 miles. It's very much the same thing, with virtual reality. You simulate the experience of being somewhere different, and then when you get that chance to be able to go there, you're a little bit more prepared or a little bit more aware about what's going on culturally, what's going on. What does the physical place looks like? It gives you better ideas. I think that's one of the great aspects about. Before it was books. Now you have these experiences like virtual reality and augmented reality that give you a better concept of what does Rome look like. Like for instance, a good example. I did a demo last week. We had people try Google Earth VR, and if anyone's ever tried that, everything's to scale. So if you go to Brazil or if you go to Poland, it's like you're there, but digitized. It's a very amazing thing. And for me, because I like to travel, it sparks my curiosity about being able to go out there. So on top of that, when you incorporate technology at a very early age, it helps you kind of be more aware that the things that we interact with on a regular basis was made by a lot of people. And it was also developed, with the idea of solving problems. And I think once people get more comfortable with knowing that, what we have in our pockets and, what we use to like playing Fortnite or anything like that, again, runs on the Unreal Engine. Just, not that I represent Unreal Engine, but give you guys some perspective. There's a lot going on under the hood. So once you get familiarized that, the things around us are things that people do on a daily basis, it's a really great time to do it, and especially since, as Bill mentioned earlier, everything's very accessible today. So it's a really great time to be able to get involved in the STEM fields, and then especially at the younger age, where like, oh wow, I'm playing Fortnite. It's like, oh, I didn't realize that there's physics that someone made in that, and that's to me is like one of the most exciting things about it. It's like there's more to it than just having it be fun, and that's my answer.
My wife and I were in Belize last week, and she's a professor, and she had a study group down there, and I kind of tagged along on the trip, which was good for me. But we were out with some folks from a university down in Belize, and I was chatting with this woman who's an archaeologist, and she ran one of the local digs, excavations of a Mayan site. And I was kind of talking about what I do. I was talking about today, and I said, oh my goodness, what would you do with augmented reality? And I just kind of described it to her, and you just saw her face light up. She's like, when people are at the ruins, you could actually, through a visor or whatever product you're using, you can make these Mayan ruins come to life. And as you're explaining how they lived and everything, as you're looking at it, you could get a very direct visual on what it was like to be there while you're there. And I think just the benefits for education for that type of thing, as well as the virtual reality, like, hey, before you go to Italy and you spend all this money to get there, have an idea of what you want to see and what it's going to be like, how you should behave, those sorts of things. But that's what I think is really going to be exciting is augmented reality. I'm a big fan of augmented reality. Nothing wrong with virtual at all. Don't get me wrong there. They are cousins. But anyway, that's my thoughts on that. So thank you.
Thank you. And along those same lines, what advice would you give to those here in the room or those in general that are interested in going into either your field of work or who are interested in pursuing a career in any other area of computer information systems or information technology?
Okay. It's a very vast field. Whether you separate things out, whether it's hardware or software, it's very expansive, as Bill pointed out earlier. So it's if just kind of stock market talk here. If you look at how the technology fields track versus the actual market, it tracks way higher, way faster. And again, economies of scale is one of the benefits of the technology field, but it's also very competitive as well. So, deciding on what area that you want to get into really depends on what your interest is, and that's really where you got to start focus first. But one of the great things is that once you learn a skill in one area, you can pivot over to another area much more easily. So it's not just, it's not like you're going to be stuck in one position at one company at any given time. There's a lot more flexibility, but it's important to understand that there's different aspects about the technology field. Whether it's software, there's dozens of programming languages that are out there. and sometimes that's not even, you can talk to a systems engineer and a software engineer, and a lot of times both of them won't even know what each other is talking about. Those are almost completely two separate fields. But getting into STEM right now is, like I said, is a very exciting time because of where technology is going, and then the gap between what's entertainment and what's quote unquote work is becoming more blurred, and part of the reason for that is just because the technology's caught up, and then the amount of available resources that are provided it's much more accessible. So, but whether you're in different fields or pursuing something like virtual reality and augmented reality, both of those industries are actually very, very much related. So a lot of the same assets that you use for virtual reality can be converted into augmented reality as well, because the digital assets are the same and just can be transported back and forth. So it's very easy that way. But I think personally, you should definitely look into what you guys are interested in first, and then research what areas you think would spark your interest, and then from there, that'll help you guys decide on what you want to do. And then again, because technology is always changing and it's always evolving very quickly. Even in the span of the 1 year that I've ran my company, there's a lot of things that's just developed over in 1 year. So just think about that. But the doors are open for everyone in this room and beyond, and being able to connect and learn from each other is a really great thing.
Nice shot, Phil. I would have to say, don't be afraid to be versatile. You might have, if you remembered, if you were listening earlier, hopefully you were. Yeah, I've had like 8 different careers at the phone company, and I even tell my own kids, who are adults now, don't feel like you have to stick with the first thing you find that you're good at. If you're good at one thing, you can be good at many things, and I think just finding your niche, finding your interest, getting good at it, being able to demonstrate that you have the discipline to get good at something, will tell future employers, what you're all about. And I think, opportunities come to those who prepare themselves. And, if you're going to go into computer science, great. Maybe have robotic process automation in your back pocket, because right now, I'm not a coder. I don't write code itself. I assemble pre-written codes to perform a function is what I do. And it's a very hot area of employment right now, because we're transitioning from older technologies to new technologies. So my point is always kind of be looking for what's out there. Don't be afraid to evolve. Don't be afraid to reinvent yourself, because there's always going to be something else. So that's my advice there. Oh, and if you end up at a big corporation, seek out a mentor. There's people like me who, we're toward the ends of our career, and, we have a lot of knowledge about why things are the way they are. So if you show up somewhere and, boy, that's kind of dumb the way you all do this, well, there might be a legal reason why they have to do that. There's a law somewhere that says you have to do it this way. So, don't be too full of yourself. Seek out people, seek out personal, person-to-person knowledge and the innate knowledge of an organization, and have someone help you along. So that's my advice there. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. As you can see, through the answers that our speakers have given us this morning, number one, skills are transferable. So the skills that both of them developed early on, whether it be through their college education, through their high school educations, those are skills that they've taken with them and they've been able to use no matter what field they've gone into. So they both have very diverse employment backgrounds, but they've been able to use that basis that they learned in high school and in college in each of those job areas. And they're doing what they love. So being able to use those skills that they developed and the skills that they've developed in each of the areas that they've worked in throughout their work experience have gotten them to where they are today, and will continue to help them to evolve. So thinking about now what you're passionate about, and then using those skills that you're learning in the classroom even now to help you make those decisions about, you know, where you want to go to college and what job you want to pursue once you graduate. Those are things that you can start thinking about now, but I think it's really important, and they've both shown this, that to do something that you love and that you're passionate about, and to always be continually learning, because especially when you're working in the field of technology, things are ever changing on a daily, hourly basis. So keeping in tune with that new technology and just always be willing and open to learning is really, really important.